This is Mark Valley. I've got a new podcast called The Live Drop, where I visit the world of intelligence, espionage, surveillance, secrets, tradecraft. I'll talk with spies about their stories of international intrigue. Sometimes I'll even talk with the actors who played them as well. Check it out at markvalley.com. It's The Live Drop.
This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
Hey everyone, my name is Kenyatta Leal, and I am a founding member and board member of The Last Mile, which is a entrepreneurship and technology program based out at San Quentin Prison in California here. I'm also manager of campus services and inside sales at Rocket Space, which is a technology campus here in San Francisco. And you're listening to Popping the Bubble.
Hey, Kenyatta. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I love that you introduced yourself with The Last Mile, because that's actually how we met in a bit of an unusual circumstance, I would say. And The Last Mile is an amazing program that was founded by very dear friends of mine, Chris Redlitz and Beverly Parenti. So we actually met when you were still behind bars in San Quentin, and it was during a demo day that The Last Mile put on. So I'd love to hear a little bit more, just what is The Last Mile about, and tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to find the program, and we can go from there.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll just take you back a little ways. I was incarcerated in 1991 for an armed robbery. Myself and a friend of mine went and robbed this place, and we got away with, I think, probably about $7,000 or something like that. We split the money and we went our separate ways. My crime partner went back to the same place a week later, tried to rob it again, got caught, and then basically told on me, snitched on me about the first robbery. Police came So the police came and apprehended me. A short time after that, arrested me, booked me in the county jail for second-degree armed robbery. This was in 1991. I met with my attorney. He told me everything that was going on, that my crime partner had, basically turned into a witness for the state, and that he was going to take the stand and testify against me. And so he advised me that the best thing for me to do at that point was to plead guilty and to get less time in prison. And so at the time, I was 22 years old. I wasn't thinking straight, obviously, having committed a robbery. And, my mind was just set on, the only thing that I was thinking about was how could I avoid the consequences? And so I signed a plea bargain for 5 years, which stipulated 2 counts of robbery. Because I took money, he and I took money from a safe and a cash register, and there were 2 victims involved. And so they charged me with 2 counts of robbery. I ended up getting sentenced to 5 years in prison. I went to prison. I served as an inmate firefighter in prison for about 3.5 years. And during that time that I was in prison, I really didn't do any internal work to address the causative factors of the crimes that I committed. As far as I was concerned, the only reason I was in jail is because my homeboy snitched on me, and that was it. And I was upset with him, and I never took responsibility for the crimes that I committed. I never held myself accountable. And 3.5 years later, I was released from prison with the same mindset that I actually went into prison with. And that wasn't a good thing for me. I was released in 1994 with 2 convictions of robbery. And this is significant because in, I believe it was March of 1994, California passed what we know as the 3 strikes law. Right. When they passed the law, those 2 counts of robbery that I had automatically turned into 2 strikes. Even though they came from 1 case, they turned into 2 strikes. And here I was getting out of prison with that same distorted way of thinking, same mentality, and walking around with 2 strikes and not even knowing it. 5 months after 5 months after my release, I was pulled over on a routine traffic stop, was found to be an ex-felon in possession of a firearm, friend of mine had a gun in a bag in the trunk of my car, and because it was in my car, I'm in possession of it. And so I was arrested for being an ex-felon in possession of a firearm. Obviously, that wasn't a good thing. When I got to the county jail, saw my attorney, and he told me, hey, listen, you know, they're charging you as a third striker, and you're looking at life in prison for being an ex-felon in possession of a firearm. And when he told me all this, I couldn't believe it because, you know, I thought the three strikes law was for people like Richard Allen Davis, you know, the guy that they made the law after, you know, people who'd been in and out of prison a bunch of times. But that wasn't the case. You know, the fine print of the law said that it doesn't matter where these convictions come from, or if you have multiple convictions, the third one counts as a third strike and you get 25 to life, and there's no negotiation about that. And so, to make a long story short, I went to trial.
At this point?
Yeah, I was 25 years old at the time. And this was in 1994. In July of 1994 is when I got arrested. I stayed in the county jail for probably about 15 months. I got sentenced to 25 to life. The judge who sentenced me, you know, was handcuffed by the law. He had to sentence me to 25 to life. 25 years old, I entered the California's prison system with a life sentence. At the time, I was really afraid for my life. I didn't wake up one day thinking, you know, I wanted to spend the rest of my life in prison. I had no idea that the consequences for my choices would be so harsh, but they were. And so I ended up going to prison with a life sentence at 25. It took me probably about 5 years to really come to this inescapable conclusion that I was the problem. You know, up until that point, it was everybody else's fault but my own. And, you know, I blamed the system. Right. I blamed the judge, my homeboy for snitching on me, all these other things. But then I realized, you know, that I was the problem. And so, you know, with that realization, I also came to this understanding that if I'm the problem, then I got to be the solution too. And so that's when I really, you know, began to, you know, to think about my actions and the impact that my actions had on other people. I did probably the most important thing that I did when I was in prison at that point in my life, which was ask for help. You know, I started reaching out and asking for help.
When you came to that realization, like what was the defining moment to get you there? Was there something that happened or an incident that occurred that made you realize that you were at the center of the issue?
Yeah, actually, it was a bunch of different things. You know how one person can tell you something and it won't resonate, but somebody that's close to you that you respect will tell you something, the same exact thing, but all of a sudden it hits you. And that's what had happened to me. I had a bunch of people in my life that were telling me that I was the problem, but I wasn't listening to them. And then one day I was on a collect call that I had made from prison to a good friend of mine, you know, and I was just complaining to him about how I got done wrong and, you know, how everybody else was a problem. And he just stopped me. He just shut me down, you know, mid-sentence during the call. I was like, listen, bro, you are the problem. The judge didn't put you in jail. You know, the three strikes law didn't put you in jail. You put yourself in jail. And he told me, he's like, straight up, he says, you know, don't call me anymore until you get your shit together. And he hung up the phone on me. Wow. Right after that, yeah, I mean, I walked back to my cell, and the whole time I was cursing him and, you know, about how bad of a friend he was and everything. But the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that, you know, he was right. And I was a tough pill to swallow because I was in deep denial about the role that I played in getting myself into prison. But that was the first chink in the armor of that denial that I was in. You know, those words that he said to me. The more that I thought about it, the more that I realized that he was right and that I needed to change my life, because the reality of it is that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. I didn't want to die in prison, you know, and my best thinking up to that point had gotten me to that situation. And I just knew that I needed to ask for help. But where I come from, the neighborhood I come from, and the principles that were instilled in me, you know, as a young man, felt like, you know, I had this male role belief system going on. I believed that, you know, as a man, I'm supposed to have all the answers, and only a sissy or a punk will ask for help. I was reluctant to ask for help because I didn't want anyone to look at me like I was less than a man. Mm-hmm. The reality of it is that real men do ask for help, and you know, everyone doesn't have all the answers. And so started to break it down, you know, break things down. And really just open myself up to change and the possibility of change. And if you don't have a framework for change, or you don't understand what change actually looks like, then you have to find it somewhere. On a prison yard, you would think that change is not there. You know, there's a lot of people who help me learn what change is all about and the process of what that looks like. Inside prison, I had, mentors. Some of my greatest mentors are still in prison today. These are men who have done a ton of work to turn their lives around, and basically they knew that they're never going to get out of prison, but they, would instill some of these values and some of these principles in people like me that they could see hope in. And, I owe a lot to those men. I can remember one incident where I was walking around the prison yard with one of my OGs, basically, and he had kind of taken me under his wing and was trying to guide me in the right direction. And, I was mixed up. I had my priorities all screwed up. He took me through this little exercise where he gave me a pencil and a piece of paper, and he asked me to write down 10 most important things in my life. And I wrote those things down, and I gave him the paper. He looked at it, and then he looked me square in the eye, and he said, "Youngster, you got 24 hours in a day. You work 8 hours and you sleep 8 hours. How many of those remaining 8 hours do you devote to these things that you say are important to you?" And right then I had one of those pivotal moments in my life, because I realized while I was talking about the things that were important to me, I wasn't actually living those things out in my life on a day-to-day basis. And, from that point, I began to align my beliefs with my actions. Slowly but surely, I was able to start taking control of my life again inside prison. One of the things that I said was important to me was my family. To that point, I had really, embarrassed my family. I had shamed my family name by committing the crimes that I committed and gone to prison. I put my mother through hell. She was just stressed out over me and the choices that I had made. And it really hurt our relationship. And so not just with my mother, but a lot of my other family members as well. And I had to humble myself and really go to them and talk to them about the choices that I had made, and shut my mouth and listen to the pain that they were going through and the things that I had put them through. And through that process, we were able to rebuild those bonds that I had violated by going to prison.
I mean, It's just such an amazing story, Kenyatta, and just listening to you and taking the responsibility for your life, even while under these extreme circumstances of not knowing how many years you're going to do on the inside. It's actually really incredible and inspiring to hear that you were able to find hope in that situation, and also with the help of your mentors on the inside.
There was no way that I would have been able to make it through that situation without the love and support of so many people who invested their time and energy into me. But that wasn't even possible until I opened my eyes and began to do the things that I needed to do to get my priorities straight first. And like I was telling you, one of the things that I said was important was my family. Another thing that I said was really important to me was my education. I had dropped out of high school in the 11th grade. And so I went back to school. I got my GED. I ended up getting involved in this program inside at San Quentin called the Prison University Project. I ended up earning my Associate of Arts degree, and I became the first person in my family to graduate from college and get a college degree, and I did it inside prison.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that was really important for me.
It's so fascinating, too, because when people think of San Quentin, you get this perception of this, it's like the worst of the worst. Charles Manson is there. I think that there's these programs that are available to prisoners on the inside that, are going to help them develop and get them prepared for a life outside is just great.
There are a lot of stereotypes and misperceptions associated with, just prison in general. Mm-hmm. San Quentin is the oldest prison in California. It's the home of California's death row. A lot of really notorious criminals have gone to San Quentin and gone through San Quentin. So it has this reputation of being that way. Over the years, San Quentin has changed a lot. It's still the home of death row, but it's also home to about 90 rehabilitative programs that men can immerse themselves in if they choose to. There's a really, just robust community inside San Quentin that's focused on change. that's another thing that I said was really important to me too, was community. At the time that I got arrested, I didn't know what community was about. I didn't understand the role that I play in my community. And it wasn't until I started getting involved in these programs that I really, understood that and began to take action within my community. One of the things that I wanted to do was figure out how I could add value to the community that I was in. And at the time, my community was San Quentin. And so, I became a tutor and a mentor and a facilitator of a bunch of different programs at San Quentin, that are designed to help people grow and really get to the root of why you committed the crimes that you committed, but more importantly, what you'll do in the future so that you don't ever do that again. Through all these programs that I met a guy named Chris Redlitz. He's a VC in San Francisco, and he'd come into San Quentin to do a talk about business and entrepreneurship. Chris had this idea that he wanted to bring. He wanted to start a technology accelerator inside San Quentin. After his talk, one of my mentors approached me with this idea that he had and asked me if I would be interested in getting involved. And as soon as I heard about it, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'd love to be involved in this, because the truth is I've always had a hustle mentality. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I just used it in the wrong way in the street. I viewed, this opportunity to work with Chris as a fantastic opportunity for me to learn how to transform my hustle and do things the right way. I got together with Chris and his wife, Beverly, and some other gentlemen that were selected to be part of the first cohort of this new revolutionary program at San Quentin. And we named it The Last Mile. Basically, the program started with us just figuring out what we're passionate about and figuring out how we could solve a problem with that passion through the form of a business. We came up with these business ideas. We distilled them down into these really refined business models and business plans. And then they taught us how to pitch these ideas and these plans at a demo day, which was our graduation. And so we worked really hard on all that. And then that's where I met you at. They brought you in.
That's where we met. And I remember going into, I have never been in a prison before, thank God. But, it was definitely an experience kind of coming to terms with like, what's going to happen? How are we going to interact with the prisoners? Like, oh my gosh, it's so scary. Like, are they going to pat us down before we get in? I just remember all of these thoughts going through my head before actually, and then, we get there and it's just like, it looks like a quad from like a college campus, and people are walking around and there's prisoners walking around. And it was just, wow, it was just like a complete trip. And then when we went into the actual demo day, it's a big hall. I guess that's where you guys do some kinds of, other activities. And then there's this amazing jazz band, incredible. They're playing and you guys are walking around and saying hi to all of us. And, we shook hands. Wait, it's not a window between us. Yeah, that was quite an interesting experience. And really, how you guys had been nurtured and mentored in this program to actually get to the point where you guys were doing demos, just like you see startup founders doing all the time when they're doing their pitch competitions, and you guys were there doing the same thing with your business ideas.
Yeah, Chris and Beverly were running an accelerator called Kick Labs in San Francisco. And basically what he said was that so many of the attributes that, the founders and the CEOs that he worked with, he saw those same attributes and characteristics in us when he came in there, and so that was kind of like the genesis of this idea of the last mile. But yeah, so demo day was such a fantastic experience because so many of us who were serving time then had never done public speaking before, had never been on stage, had never had got an opportunity to share our passions and our ideas with other people. One of the things about prison is that, people in prison don't have a voice. People in prison are never listened to. I mean, you committed a crime, and so you're thrown in prison, and then your voice is just muted. You don't get to vote. Nobody listens. It's like you're a criminal. Shut the hell up, basically. And so for Chris and Bev to teach us the things that they taught us, and then to bring people from the business community into the prison to actually hear what we had to say, that was very empowering, and it gave not just me, but everybody who was involved in the program hope for change, hope that, that they could actually make a difference and that they can add value to not just the community of San Quentin, but to the world with these products that we were building. And so after our demo day, I was fortunate enough to meet a gentleman by the name of Duncan Logan. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Rickards. And Chris and Bev brought Duncan into San Quentin to be present at the demo day, but they had brought him in originally a couple months before that to help us with our business plans and help us work on our pitches. And Duncan and I had kind of hit it off, and, you know, he seemed like a cool guy. And so after our demo day, we were chatting, and I just hit him up straight up, man. I was like, if I get out here tomorrow, would you hire me? And he said, yes. I can't tell you how important that was for me, because at that point in my life, I mean, I was already working really hard to achieve my goals, but to have a successful business person come into the prison when I'm serving 25 to life and actually, you know, agree to offer me a job when I got out, I mean, that was super inspiring for me, and it made me reach 10 times deeper, you know, to achieve my goals.
When this happened, this moment, did you have a reasonable expectation of getting out soon? How long had you been in?
At that point, I had been in prison for 18 years. You know, they had this, so there was these reform efforts to reform the three strikes law that were, at that point in time, they were just talks. The Stanford Three Strikes Project, they were working on an amendment for the law, and it didn't come to fruition until about a year later. They actually got it on the ballot. And once it got on the ballot, I was not skeptical, but I was really being cautious. I was being cautiously optimistic, because there were a bunch of other measures that had failed up to that point. And I didn't want to get my hopes up too high, but I definitely wanted to, you know, see the thing change. You know, they actually got it on the ballot, and the California voters passed the law, the amendment. It was Prop 36. That's what it was called. So Prop 36 was passed into law during the November election of 2012. July of 2000. Well, let me back up just a second. When the law was passed, it made me eligible to get resentenced. It wasn't like a get out of jail free card. I actually had to petition the same judge who sentenced me to life in prison. I had to petition him and demonstrate that I was no longer a danger to the public. And so I had, you know, during my time in prison, I had spent a lot of time working on myself, really understanding the causative factors that led me to prison to begin with, and also at the same time working on a plan for my future. I presented all this information to the judge. He looked at it all, and he realized that I wasn't the same 25-year-old that he sentenced to life. I was 44 at the time, you know, and he recognized the changes that I had made.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner.
And this is Sandra Ponce de Leon from Popping the Bubble.
We love making this show for you and giving these incredible interviews.
Absolutely. We meet the greatest people. We'd love for your support by going to iTunes and subscribing, and maybe even leaving us a 5-star review.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In my life. And so he agreed to resentence me to 7 years. And so when he did that, after he resentenced me to 7 years, at that point, I had already served 19 years. And so I walked out of prison, literally a free man, about a week after that resentencing. It was just it was without a doubt the most I can't even put it into words how good it felt to walk out of prison after serving a life sentence. I'm serious. It just blows me away when I think about it.
Yeah.
You know, I really wish that I could just take the feeling and bottle it and pour everybody a cup so they could take a sip and just experience what that feels like.
I'm kind of feeling it now. It's a lot changed in 18 years from when you went in. What was it like? I mean, how did you adjust? It must have been the biggest culture shock.
Well, actually, a lot did change. I mean, technology had advanced in a lot of ways. Fashion had changed. All kinds of stuff had changed, you know. But in my mind, the most important thing that changed was, you know, the way that I view myself and my role in the community and what I'm capable of doing, you know, in life. So those were the biggest things that changed. I really wasn't concerned about everything that was happening out here because I knew that I would adjust to it sooner or later. You know, the biggest change that I was concerned with was the change that happened within me. Environments change. I walked from being in an incarcerated setting out in the free world, being able to make choices and everything. But if the environment between my own two ears, my own mind, my own thought processes, if that hadn't changed, then I would be right back in prison again. And so at the forefront of my thoughts, and still at the forefront of my thoughts, is how I conduct myself, how I live my life. I'm really not concerned about all this other stuff that's around me that's changed. That was what was, at the forefront of my thoughts when I got out. I think probably one of the things that surprised me the most was when I first got my hands on a smartphone and I was able to Google stuff. I was able to find information in a split second that would have taken me hours to find, before I went to prison. I had access to tons of information and data. So that, I think, was probably the biggest change that I saw. It wasn't something that I was ever afraid of, reluctant to get involved with. Quite the opposite. I couldn't wait to immerse myself in all this latest technology and to get up to speed. The last mile played a huge role in helping me do all that. And so, I'm super grateful to Chris and Bev and, supporters like yourself, Sandra, who took time and to come in and support us. And that really means a lot to me. And I just want to thank you for that.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's incredibly inspiring to hear your story. And, for those of us that it's just, I think a lot of people haven't done work that you've done. And, while you were, incarcerated, not that that's the best situation, but you can definitely see that you've done so much internal work. We pay a lot of lip service to it. We'll do a meditation here and there, but it's really telling and it shines through in terms of the work that you've done. And it's an incredibly inspiring story.
I wanted to ask about your peers. I mean, for you, the timeline, it works out pretty well. You are investing in yourself sort of in the blind, though, with no true expectation of a change in your future, until this law passes. And given the background of a lot of people that have grown up in very hard environments that are in San Quentin, how does someone who maybe hasn't turned the corner like you did at year 5, how do you help your peer say, hey, this is a good avenue for us, or any of the other programs? How rare is that kind of a realization that this is worth putting our time and effort into, even if it's just to improve ourselves internally in the system?
Yeah. So even though I had a life sentence, true enough, I didn't know exactly when I was going to get out, but I always had hope that I would get out. And I wanted to be prepared for that. But in the event that I didn't get out, I wanted to make a difference where I was. I wanted to atone for, the wrongs that I had done and the harms that I had committed against other people. I knew that I couldn't go back and take the pain away that I caused them. But what I could do is live my life in a different manner. What I could do is share my experience with younger men who entered the prison system, that wanted to change too. That's really, where that came from. And there are a lot of men and women who are inside incarcerated settings right now who are doing the very same thing. One of the misperceptions that the general public has about the incarcerated population is that everybody's sitting inside there just waiting to get out and to commit another crime. And that's so far from the truth. I'm sure there probably are people in there like that, but I can tell you the overwhelming majority of people that I met inside prison are men who recognize that they've done something wrong and they want to do something different with their lives. They don't want to nobody wants to spend the rest of their life in prison, and so I can tell you from firsthand experience that there are a lot of people in there who are doing the right thing. They just deserve a chance. There's so many people that could get out and do exactly what I'm doing right now, maybe even do it better, than I'm doing it right now, but they just don't have the chance. They're still stuck in prison. And so to answer your question, though, to go back, because you're saying, how can you help these other people turn the corner? Well, the first thing that you have to do is just meet people where they're at. I can't sit here and tell somebody what to do with their life. I can't tell somebody what they should be doing. I don't should on people. I meet people where they're at, and I just share my experience, and it's a gift that I have to share. And if they want to take it right now, that's great. My hand is out, my arm is extended, my hand is open. It's there, it's a gift. They can take it now, they could take it later. It's there for the taking whenever they want it. That's kind of the way that I approach it when I go back into jails and prisons, because that's some of the work that I still do today. Everybody's in some form of change. All of us are evolving, in some way as human beings. And, to understand that process of change. Not everybody changes when you want them to or how you want them to, but everybody's in their own process. And you just have to honor that and respect that. Just meet people where they're at in their process and support them the best way that you can.
We had Shaka Senghor on my other podcast, the Break It Down Show. And he's a great, he is an amazing brother. I'm super proud of him. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm super proud of him and the work that he's doing. Yeah.
Fantastic guy.
And one of the things that he's learned from his own time from touring prison systems around the world is he believes that every single criminal, every single incarcerated person, every single person that's in jail, however you want to categorize them, every single one is rehabilitatable. You've been inside for decades. How do you concur with his conclusion that every single person can be rehabilitated, or do you think that's too far?
No, I believe that every single person has redeemable qualities. I think he's spot on right. There are no throwaway people in this world. None. Every single one of us has redeemable qualities. If we just have people around us that can support us and help guide us and help love on us and just, give us the tough love when we need it and just help us learn the things that we need to learn, anyone can change. I firmly believe what Brother Shaka had spoke to and said. Yeah, I concur with that 100%.
Yeah, he's a powerful guy. We've also had the good fortune of having Devone Bogan on our show. And, he's worked hard, and now it's a nationwide program, in taking people that are committing violent crimes before they get into prison or back into prison. And he's finding ways to rehabilitate these guys to get them the help they need. So it's obviously that there's a lot of people working on this. We can rehabilitate everybody who's willing to do the work. I just love the message that Shaka, Devone, and you, Kenyatta, like these are fantastic things. And as much as you want to thank Sandra for coming out, and she deserves that, but we want to thank you for giving all of us on the outside a chance to understand that, there is room for some compassion and some tolerance and some hard work to get someone who's not in the right way over to the side where they're contributing and where they feel valuable.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I guess one of the things that's been kind of bumping around in my head recently, just because it's been making the rounds on social media and a lot of the news sites, and women are now speaking out more about, having to deal with sexual predators from Hollywood and now here in Silicon Valley. And, we've seen a lot of prominent people, really being called out for their bad behavior. I'd love to just kind of hear from you. What do you think that these men need to do? There's a slim chance they're going to jail, but what do you think these men need to do to really redeem themselves and get to a point where they're not the predators that they are and not, making excuses for their bad behavior? What do you think that they need to do to redeem themselves? And is there, for some of these guys, maybe a lot of people won't want to accept their apologies, or they ring, hollow in their apologies. What do you think they need to do beyond just an apology in a blog post?
I think the first thing that they need to do is just take a step back and realize how their actions have impacted other people. When you don't have empathy, when you're not able to take yourself out of yourself for a moment to think about how, actually just put yourself in someone else's shoes for a minute, it's impossible to really understand the fullness of what you've done. These gentlemen who are accused of all these actions, they need to have some empathy. They need to, stop denying it, because basically that's all I'm seeing. I see it from all these different people. They're all in denial. They're all saying, I didn't do it, she's crazy, or this, that, and the other. The reality of it is that everybody sees it. The only person that doesn't see it is themselves. So they need to own their shit, whatever it is, own it. That's what part of being a man is all about, is taking responsibility. And if you've hurt somebody, then you apologize. And not only apologize, but you change your life in a way that, that apology shows up in your life every day in your actions. It'd be one thing for me to say, hey, I'm sorry for the crimes that I committed, and that's it. Now here I am out here just going on about my business and just living my life the same way that I used to. But that doesn't cut it. You have to take it to the next level. If you really, truly, sincere about the changes that you've made, it has to show up in your life on a day-to-day basis. And so these men have to go back to square one. They have to take responsibility for what they've done, and they have to change their lives in a way that everybody can see that this is real, this is true. And so if they want to earn that kind of respect back, that's the kind of stuff they have to do. And it doesn't make them less of a man to say that they were wrong. Yeah. It doesn't make them less of a person or a human being to say, hey, I made a bad choice. There's power in that. People think that if you do that you're going to somehow lose everything. But the reality of it is you gain everything when you do that. Our president could learn from that. Harvey Weinstein and all the rest of these guys, they could learn from that. And so, I really hope that we can get to a point where people, respect one another and themselves enough to just be honest with themselves, about themselves, and just understand that by doing so, they're able to make the kind of changes that they want to make.
We covered a lot of ground with your background and all of these kind of things. We'd love to hear a little bit about what's next for you. Like what's coming on? What are you working up to?
That's a great question. So currently I work really, really closely with The Last Mile. I'm an evangelist for the organization. I'm also on the board of directors. We are building out an LMS, a learning management system within the program that's going to help us scale. And so let me back up just a little bit, because we started off with The Last Mile just purely focused on business and entrepreneurship. But what we found is that one of the biggest hurdles that people have reintegrating back into society is finding employment. There's huge stigma around hiring formerly incarcerated folks. And so one of the ways that we're addressing this is by teaching computer coding. In 2014, we shifted from pure business and entrepreneurship to software development and computer coding inside prison, the first ever in the world. No one has ever done this
Which
before.
is done without computers, by the way.
Exactly.
Because you don't have computers or cell phones on the inside.
Well, we actually do have computers. What we don't have is connectivity. We partnered with Hack Reactor and built this proprietary system where it's like a simulated online experience. So these guys, it feels like they're online in a search engine, but really, it's this network that's on the inside that's contained, just there inside prison. And so it's a fantastic program. They're learning full stack, JavaScript, CSS, a whole bunch of other stuff they're learning. I'm not a coder, but these guys are learning so much. We've had 200 people graduate from the program, 25 released. Everybody's working right now. Everybody's doing great. One of the most recent guys who graduated from the program, a guy named Ali Tambura. You guys should interview him too. He's fantastic. This guy went through Code 7370, the Last Mile program inside San Quentin, got out, got a scholarship to enter into a Hack Reactor. He graduated from Hack Reactor, and about a week ago, he got a job with Chan Zuckerberg. This guy is just an amazing story. He's taken everything that he's learned from the program and leveraged it in a way where he's in the tech world now. His experience is something that I think a lot of these guys and the women in our program are learning from. We're currently in 3 men's prisons and 2 women's prisons, and I look forward to being part of helping scale this program across the nation. We have interest from about 35 states right now. The primary focus right now, though, is continuing to build out the LMS and make it so that we want to fine tune it to the point when we do scale, it's going to be great. We don't want it to be a flash in the pan. We want to create a sustainable program that's going to be around for years and years to come. None of this would be possible without the kind of partnerships that we've built. And so, my position right now, what I'm looking forward to within the next, 5 to 10 years is to continue to grow these partnerships, become more of an integral part of the team, probably eventually join the Last Mile team full time, take this thing into the future and scale it across the nation.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's ambitious. And I love it. And I want you guys to succeed. That is fantastic. How do people support you guys? How do they find out about The Last Mile? I know that your Twitter account is at Kenyatta Leal there, but tell us how we get a hold of you guys for all these things.
Yeah, so you can go to thelastmile.org and you can find us there. We're at TLM on Twitter. But if you go to thelastmile.org or thelastmileworks.org, you can find us there. The Last Mile Works, that's the for-profit arm of our organization. We build websites for companies and organizations that need them. So not only are you building your website, but you're helping someone build their future. through this program. And so, yeah, you can find us there at TLM on Twitter, lastmile.org. We're also on Facebook too, Last Mile on Facebook.
Yeah, it's been really such a pleasure kind of watching the Last Mile, how it's grown from inception and from an idea. I remember talking to Chris and Beverly about it to the program that it is today and impacting so many people for the better. And I think also helping, society as a whole really understand that, everyone does have potential. It does make sense and it's important to invest in people that are, coming out of incarceration rather than, have them just go back to the same thing they've been doing and improving those recidivism rates. So it's an incredible program.
Well, thank you so much. And, we wouldn't be where we're at today without the kind of support that we've received, not just inside from the men, the prison administration, but also from the business community. Sandra, you could have been doing a million other things, but you took time out to come to spend, with us when I was on the inside, to spend time with us and to share your experience and support the program. And it's that kind of thing that's going to, make the change. People on the inside, yeah, they need to change, but we also need people out here to change our views and our perceptions of what's possible after a person is incarcerated. I think that the Last Mile is really changing the narrative in a way that hasn't been done before. And I'm very, very proud to be part of this program. And I look forward to great things to come.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Kenyatta, for coming on. Really inspirational. I loved it. Thank you for giving me this message for me to enjoy, because these things enrich our lives. And I know Sandra and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing our message of hope. And if there's ever anything that I could do, consider it done.